he came along at the wrong time. If he comes, if he's 5 years older, not even 5 years, what was he? This third class, second
Mhm.
class. He was the second class of one and
Yeah,
done,
yeah.
right? Yeah, because
Yep.
oh
Oh,
07,
oh, yeah, oh 07, oh 08, yeah.
yeah, oh 07 was the first class. Yeah. So if he's 3 years older, he's just going out of high school, and this isn't a problem at all. And someone's like, Derek, we have evidence that Derrick Rose did not take his SATs, and everyone rolls their eyes and they're like, cool.
The headline that comes out is that, this board has basically come together with Frank Martin and some other coaches, and they wanted to say that, basically the SAT and the ACT, they are not congruent with the thoughts of everyone. There's not an equal, let's say it's not equal testing. The standardized test is not equal
Yeah.
for everyone involved, right? So that's where we are with this. And when you hear that in college basketball vernacular, immediately the face that comes to mind, the story that comes to mind is Derrick Rose. And you have the bullet points because people may not remember how this all played out. So with
Yeah.
Derrick Rose, what happened, Mark Titus?
So first of all, I want to start with this. I misremembered a lot of stuff about this, and by
Mhm.
that I mean I misremembered that it was kind of cut and dry. I
Yes.
thought there was more ambiguity to what happened. I thought there was more like you could argue that like Derrick Rose didn't do anything wrong, and I guess
I guess you can.
kind
You
of.
can you can
You could argue that
depending.
he was like a pawn in all of it, but it definitely
Yes.
happened. I mean,
Mhm.
it definitely 100% happened that the man had his SAT forged. So I thought I'd start there. That like part of my desire to talk about this was I thought there was more meat on this bone. That it was like, ooh yeah, let's get into it. What actually happened? Here's what happened to you. Derrick Rose took the ACT 3 times. He failed all 3 times. I don't know what his score was, but he did not get a passing grade. The way this works, by the way, I should preface it with this.
FERPA.
Uh, the my understanding, this is how it worked when I was in high school. At least college basketball recruits, there's like a sliding scale. Like the higher your GPA is, the lower your passing SAT and ACT score could be. You had to
Mhm.
have like the right. So if you have like a obviously a really low GPA, you got to get a high SAT score. If you have a high GPA, low SAT, pretty obvious. But you had to find that like happy middle.
Yeah.
So whatever the score was that Derrick Rose needed, he failed 3 different times. Then he takes his SAT and passes, but he takes the SAT in Detroit. He took the
Mhm.
ACT in Chicago. He's from Chicago, from the South Side of Chicago, with the Simeon Academy. Academy? Is it the Academy or high
Mhm.
school? Simeon, world famous in Chicago. Everyone knows Simeon, but takes the SAT in Detroit, and that's looking back. A lot of people are scratching their heads about that. Why is he taking the SAT in Detroit? Some people are pointing to the fact that World Wide Wes is based out of Detroit. That had something to do with it. World Wide Wes, obviously a Coach Cal guy. Derrick Rose and Eric Gordon thought to be sort of a package deal going to Illinois. Eric Gordon pulls out, goes to Indiana. D Rose takes his test in Detroit, gets steered to Memphis, quote unquote. Maybe, maybe not. Um, all of this is kind of, these are the bullet points of the timeline. So then in October 2007, Memphis gets word that maybe his SAT is not on the up and up. They do an internal investigation, I'm sorry, and they okay it. May 2008, this is after Derrick Rose, his season's over. He's already declared for the draft. In about a month, he's going to go #1 to the Bulls. In May 2008, the SAT board themselves, like they do an independent investigation. They conclude that the handwriting on the SAT does not match up with Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose does not cooperate with this investigation. He
Mhm.
cooperates with the
The
Memphis
Memphis. Yep.
investigation because he's still on the roster. He's still a
Yep.
student. At this point in May, he's like, who gives a
Mhm.
I'm going to the NBA. I don't need to cooperate with all this. So he's like getting ready for the draft. Does not really cooperate. The SAT looks into it. They say that his handwriting does not match up. The guy who took the test does not match up with Derrick Rose's handwriting. That is ultimately like the two big pieces of evidence are the handwriting doesn't match up, and he took the test in Detroit inexplicably. Like if you were just taking an SAT, you would obviously take it in Chicago unless there is some
Mhm.
shenanigans going on. So the test gets voided. This is in May after the season. So fast forward to January 2009, about 7-8 months later, the NCAA sends their notice of allegations to Memphis. Uh, this is in the middle of what ended up being John Calipari's final season at Memphis. He's got Tyreek Evans on the roster.
Yep.
They end up losing to the Sweet 16, I think, to Missouri. March 2009, after they lose to Missouri, Cal takes the Kentucky job. Memphis hires 31-year-old Josh Pastner. All the recruits that Cal had lined up to come to Memphis pull out. And then in August 2009, fast forward, the NCAA violations finally hit Memphis, and Memphis gets all their wins vacated from Derrick Rose. So that's kind of the bullet points. They get all the wins vacated. I think they get put on 3 years probation. But that is your timeline, Tate.
In the Derrick Rose story arc, everyone should be pulling for Derrick, but because of this cloud,
right?
The idea that he could have lied to Memphis and say that he did take the SAT. A lot of people, I feel like their opinions were shaped around this of Derrick Rose. So even when he was winning 38 games, dominating, was so spectacular, the cloud kind of got in the way. It was like, well, but yeah. Like we'll see, what happens with this. And I think that was one thing that I hated upon reflection as I'm reading all these stories. It's like, man, Derrick Rose, like you said earlier, he was a pawn in this game. And it kind of negatively affected the way we viewed the way he played the game of basketball, which was so beautiful at the time.
Yeah, I think if you're making the case to defend Derrick Rose, and I think you and I probably both fall more on that side of like
we know the system. Yeah.
The one thing I guess I wouldn't defend is like he knew he didn't take the test.
Yes,
he knew that was like against the rules. Now, like whether he's within his rights to like game the system anyway because the system's stupid, so like go ahead, break the rules. Like
that's pretty much where we are right now. This whole thing, it's like if they're now saying that this is structurally wrong and set up for the guys to fail, then Derrick is the perfect person to point that out. So
he's the pioneer.
He's not in the wrong because the system is incorrect, but we won't go back and revisit that, and revisionist history won't say that's the case. They'll still say Derrick Rose cheated on his SAT and he's a cheater.
The part that you defend him on is that like since Derrick Rose was, I don't know, pick an age, 14, 13, 12, 16, doesn't really matter. He knew he wanted to play in the NBA. This is what he wanted to do with his life. He wants to play professional basketball. He wants to get paid handsomely for it. What else matters than that? That is the career path I am choosing. Mm-hmm. You do not need to pass the Scholastic Aptitude Test to get buckets, Tate. That is not a prerequisite to like be a bucket getter in the National Basketball Association. So if you really think about it, like it's kind of weird to like take a guy, the system is taking this guy, shoving him down this path that he ultimately, like if you would ask Derrick Rose back when he was coming out of high school, do you want to go to Memphis? He'd be like, of course not. I want to go to the NBA. This is stupid. Why do I have to go to class? Why do I have to take these stupid tests? Who cares about my GPA? I'm the best player in the country. Why can I not get paid for it? So he was sort of like forced into this. And I know everyone argues like the counter argument to that's always like he didn't have to go to college. He could have played overseas. I would say like, honestly, not really. Like you got to remember in 2008, this was not a thing. And he could have been the pioneer that like Brandon Jennings kind of ended up becoming that. Like Brandon Jennings ended up being that trailblazer that was like, to hell with this, I'm going overseas. Cause like that, I mean, I don't remember. Were there guys that did it before him?
No, I mean, it was pretty much Brandon. It was pretty much him. It was the Arizona. Like Arizona thought Brandon Jennings was going to go there, and then he said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to go overseas."
Like it was a path for Derrick Rose to take, but not really. He came along at the wrong time. If he's 5 years older, not even 5 years. What was he? The third class, second class. He was the second class of one again, right? Yeah, because 07.
07, 08.
Yeah, 07 was the first class. So if he's 3 years older, he's just going out of high school, and this isn't a problem at all. And someone's like, we have evidence that Derrick Rose did not take his SATs, and everyone rolls their eyes and they're like, cool.
Thanks.
We don't care. And that's ultimately like kind of how this played out, was that all of this kind of blew up after he was gone. And then all of a sudden he's winning Rookie of the Year in Chicago and tearing up the NBA, wins the MVP his third year in Chicago. But that first year he's getting asked about this, and part of the reason, like he first of all, he's never come out and said, yeah, I didn't take my SAT. But secondly, like every time he's been asked about it, it's been in his rearview mirror to where like, why am I addressing this? Who cares? Like this is in the past. I don't ultimately care. It was a means to an end.
As I was looking back, right, I was just typing in headlines like Derrick Rose cheater, just to see like, all these sports blogs that would pick this up, and you kind of read all of them, and they're all just talking about how Derrick Rose had taken so much away from Memphis and how he had cheated the game. And so I tried to put my thinking cap on, Mark Titus. I started thinking about it. And it's like Memphis, all the money that they made from that 1 year, no one took it, right? They kept all that money.
I don't know if that's true. I think to your larger point stands. I do think part of the violations were
maybe
like
they paid some penalties.
So they had to pay back like their NCAA tournament share or something. But to your larger point, like it increased the profile of the school, and they've made a ton of money since then because of it. Yeah.
And Derrick Rose, right after the fact, he gives a donation that's anonymous, an anonymous donation to Memphis to basically say like, my bad, like I'm not going to say anything, but here's the money for me to say like I'll make up the damages that this may have cost you, right, to get you off my back.
Even now, today, in the current, as we look back on it, and like I don't think it's quite as big of a deal as it was back then. Obviously, given what we've learned, like I'm not, I wouldn't, if it happened now, I'm not writing a column like crucifying the kid and saying like there's anything that's wrong with college basketball. But I still think there's got to be like a punishment. I still think it's like not nothing. It's got to be something, right?
I mean, if it was in May 2008 or whatever, and all this stuff was coming out, and you were Mark Titus, the college basketball writer at ESPN, and that was the media era, you would have to write that story. Is what I'm saying. That was what I felt was unfortunate at the time. Is like everyone was waiting to write that because everyone kind of had an idea that this is what went down. It was kind of hush hush. People were talking about it. It was behind the scenes, and it was more, I feel like, an agent conversation for the NBA.
Yeah,
that it was. Then it kind of got, leaked down into the college basketball ranks. And that was, I don't know, it was just very unfortunate, but it's funny how quickly in 12 years the perceptions change to the other side, where if someone did write that article right now, it would be over for them. It'd be like, what are you talking about? This kid is a product of the system and no one's taking care of it. And it would be a whole thing.
On the flip side, I think if this happens today, Cal gets crucified even more than he did. And I know he still does. I know this is something that gets brought up. You cannot mention John Calipari's name without mentioning 2 vacated Final Fours. The first one at UMass and Marcus Camby. And this one obviously being the second one. He's the first coach ever, the only coach ever to have multiple Final Fours vacated. I think if this happens today, the Cal thing is still a bigger deal because whether it's true or not, the NCAA has pretended, at least in the last few years, to shift away from plausible deniability being a thing. Like that's been like a huge shift. I think like Roy was the last one that got in as the gate was closing on plausible deniability. Roy just like slid right in and then it shut. And then Pitino started knocking on the door.
He's like, no, I couldn't do that.
And Pitino's like, what happened? Let me out. And Roy's just waving at him like, sorry, buddy. The way the NCAA is talking, at least, whether they're dropping the hammer or not, the way they're talking is that plausible deniability is no longer okay. If something happens under your watch, you have to take the fall for it. So I think if this happens today, Cal, he doesn't get a 5-year show cause or anything, but he gets hit with something.
Yeah, he doesn't get a better job. He doesn't get
He doesn't
hired by Kentucky.
He doesn't get his golden parachute to Camelot, where he's now making $35 million over the next 8 years or whatever it was.
And recruiting the next Derrick Rose, John Wall. I mean, that was a pretty good deal for Calipari and a pretty good deal for Derrick Rose, which is why I feel like most Memphis fans are upset about Derrick Rose and John Calipari for the right reasons, right? Both those guys got out of Dodge at the right time. Derrick really never had to answer for it because, like you said, he goes to Chicago and he's beloved by Chicago. He goes to his hometown. So Memphis is, that's a sidebar. That's not even a conversation that people are having anymore. It's all about Chicago. It's all focused on Chicago. Cal, like you said, he's in Camelot. It's all about Kentucky. It's all about building the brand of Kentucky. It's all about being the face of, I'm the cool one and done coach. This is how you get to the NBA. And he hardly even referenced, Derrick Rose in Memphis when he talked about it. He obviously did with John Wall and Cousins and those guys. But once that class was there, that was the class. That was the blueprint. That was what he pointed to. And I don't know. It is. I understand the Memphis fan point of view. Which
the other point of view, if you're a Memphis fan, is not only all that, but DeMarcus Cousins and Xavier Henry were committed to Memphis at the time, and so was John Wall. Was thought to be like what was John Wall was number 1, Cousins was 2. And Henry was 3 or something like that. So they were 1, 2, 3.
They were all like, exactly.
Cousins and Henry have already committed to Memphis at Cal, or to Cal at Memphis. I mean, and then John Wall was thought to be like John Wall. Even if you ask him today, like he says, he went to Kentucky just because of Cal. Like you just wanted to play for Cal. So like you can kind of deduce that John Wall was going to end up at Memphis if that was the case. So you just kind of you just start playing the what if game and connecting dots. And if this Derrick Rose SAT thing doesn't happen and the national runner-up stands. And that's that's etched in stone and cemented in John Calipari's legacy. And then he's got number 1, number 2, number 3 lined up coming for next year. And there is no notice of allegations in January 2009. Is John Calipari going to Kentucky? I don't think he is. I think he's staying at Memphis with the top 3 recruits coming to Memphis. And
I think Memphis is a blue blood, right? I mean,
I think so. Yeah.
And then Rick Barnes and John Calipari are battling it out. Like the Memphis Tennessee thing is amazing, and Kentucky is one of those are they going to get back? It's an Indiana situation where everyone's like, who's going to be the coach to come in and clear this up and figure this out? And that's why I don't know. The chips fell very well for everyone at the top of college basketball, except for Memphis, which is
who also I loved how the best
Jerry Tarkanian taught us about this, so I don't know. It seems a little too I don't know.
I left out the best part that 31-year-old Josh Pastner took over with 0 head coaching experience after all this.
The other crazy part about all this is that I've seen all these Ivy League schools because of the pandemic. They're not going to take SAT and ACT scores into consideration this year, because of the testing sites not being available and all sort of stuff. So that kind of sets the table right for these schools to say, well, they don't really matter anyway.
When these stories gets packaged, the headline is like, Derrick Rose concocted this plan to throw double middle fingers at every authority figure in his life and say, to hell with all of you. I don't care about education.
Let's burn it to the ground. Yeah, that's how people read it. Yeah.
The reality is Derrick Rose was probably in a room just texting, or what was it, 2006? He's probably on a sidekick.
He's on a sidekick.
Back in the day. He's on a sidekick just texting, and someone comes in and is like, all right, Derrick, here's the plan.
You got to go to Detroit.
You gotta go to college, and the way we're going to do that is you're going to go to Detroit, and you're just going to go to a Pistons game, and then just come back in a couple of days. And he's like, cool. And that's all I said. Like, that was
straight up. I mean,
cool.
I think
Tell me where I'm going.
And that's the problem with all of this. I mean, there's so many people that are runners and people around that you kind of, I mean, his mom, I read Derrick's biography, and his mom basically was like, I do not want him to have people around him. So I kept him inside. I tried to keep him isolated. I tried to keep him away from people that wanted to talk to him.
Ahead of his time, self-quarantining. Good.
Yeah, exactly. And the craziest part of it all, if you really think about it, is that Derrick Rose plays for the Pistons now. And his whole basketball journey started at a Pistons game when everyone kind of got riled up, and now he's the point guard for the Pistons. And he's kind of had like a second life in the NBA.
This story is very fascinating because I think it is a great example of one that Derrick Rose definitely did something wrong in the sense that he did not take his SAT, and the rules say you must take your SAT. He knew he did something wrong, and yet if it happens now, we would still say it's wrong, but you'd be like, I get it. I get it. And I realized that he didn't have, he was just a pawn in the game, and all the guy wanted to do was hoop. And like all these adults were squeezing every dime they could out of him and telling him where to go. And he was just like, whatever, just give me the league.
Quite literally, whatever. Give me the basketball. I'm the point guard for the Memphis Tigers. I'm going to listen to this coach who actually seems to genuinely care about me. And I think one of the things that the SAT, that if this all goes through and happens, is that I had so many kids from hometown, close hometowns, Bunn, North Carolina, all these little, where Tariq Cohen is from. There were so many talented players that couldn't go to VCU or couldn't get into NC State. That couldn't go to all these schools because of the SAT and the ACT. And a lot of it was culturally blocking them from being able to go to these places to qualify. And sometimes there was a kid in my high school, Nick Jeffries, that VCU couldn't get him in, and then they were able to get him in, but it was like they didn't know if they were going to put in the resources to try to get him in originally. And it's like, it's a decision that's made, but these are people's lives. And I hope that if this blockade is sort of taken out of consideration, then maybe some of those guys get those opportunities that didn't get the opportunities before. They can go to a place of higher education. And honestly, people from my hometown are going to take that as a real opportunity. If they get to go to Duke or an NC Central or North Carolina or NC State, it's going to hit different, and they're going to take it really seriously. And they're not, it's not going to be some, I'm here for 8 months and then I'm going to the NBA. But and that may change the landscape of college basketball.
To your point, this is why we do a lot of shtick on this show, but all shtick aside, dead serious, I welcome the G League turning into like what everyone thinks is competition in college basketball, taking all the top recruits, all that kind of stuff. I welcome it in the sense that I want there to be a viable option for these guys, for a guy like Derrick Rose coming out. And I want the NBA to let guys come out of high school. I think that's an NBA, like, just be better scouts. That's ultimately what got you. That's why they instituted the one and done rule in the first place, is because scouts couldn't stop shooting themselves in the foot and drafting like guys straight out of the womb. And it's like, just be better scouts and you don't have this problem. But if they're not going to do that, have the G League be a viable option for a guy like Derrick Rose coming out of high school. And then that way, the guys who do go to college, like, genuinely want to be there. If those guys are cheating on their SATs, we punish them. We're like, listen, this is an institution of higher learning. Like, we have these. If it's not the SAT, whatever it is, whatever the stipulations are, this is what you signed up for. We are not a professional basketball league. We are an institution of higher learning with extracurricular basketball. That is what we do here. And if this is what you want to be a part of, these are the rules you follow. And if you don't, go over here and make $500,000 in the G League. Like, those are your options. It would be awesome. And that would make college basketball better, because all this corruption and everything going on, would, I mean, probably wouldn't go away all the way, but it certainly helped the problem.
Download the all-new Fox Sports app now.